Hey everyone. So today is our second day of Media Literacy Week, and today we're going to talk about sourcing of information. Yesterday we discussed the importance of zoning information, understanding what you're looking at. Is it fact, fiction, or feeling? Are they trying to tell you something? Are they trying to sell you something? Are they trying to get you to feel a certain way? Are they trying to provoke an emotional reaction? So once you've identified the zone of information that you're looking at, right, whether or not it's a news report or an opinion, recognizing those details is important. Once you've identified something as a news source or something that you are looking for, how do we determine credibility? So when we look at news, news agencies and organizations have standards of journalism, and some apply the standards of journalism in a much more efficient way than others. The standards of journalism are listed here. Verification means, do they verify their stories? Do they verify their facts? Right? And there's different ways that facts are verified. Documentation means, what do you provide? What is linked in the source to document from another source of information what you're reporting. Context means sharing the bigger picture, talking about the wider details. Fairness means reaching out to both sides in controversial topics. For example, this morning I was reading an article about reopening of schools in different areas in the Midwest as a result of the COVID pandemic. And fairness means reaching out to community members, building and district administration, as well as teachers to get their say on all of it. You vet the sources. You make sure that your sources are trusted, credible sources of information. And corroborating details of stories means, if you hear something from one source of information, do you have another source of information that can make sure that fact or narrative that you're providing is in fact accurate? Okay. The next topic we have to understand is that bias exists in all of us, right? Oh, I think I skipped a page. I did skip a page. Excuse me. Making sure that you're paying attention to the evidence that's provided. So people argue things all the time, and Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, they're not sources of information. They're places where people share their information. So, for example, I'm sharing this through social media, right? So you have to take into account who is presenting the information, who's creating this information, and are they credible sources? What's the evidence they provide? Is it a trusted source? Is it an expert for information? All those things should play into whether or not you trust something that you see and whether or not you share it and spread that information with other people you follow. Look out for logical fallacies, ad hominem attacks. So if you say, like, that person can't be trusted for some reason not related to the argument they're making, that's certainly something that would affect the credibility. Slippery slope, straw man arguments, look more into those or ask about them, and I'll certainly be willing to help you out on that. The next question we would have to ask is, what is the bias? We have to recognize that bias exists in all of us, right? Quality journalism should be transparent and neutral, right? And it usually is. Quality journalism generally is, but there is going to be bias, and it's important to recognize those and recognize that the different ways that bias manifests itself. How is a question framed? How is a story framed? What's the tone? What's the selection? Who's publishing what on what terms? What's the source? So those are different types of bias and bias manifestation. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions on that. And then finally, the big question is, how do we know what to trust? So lateral research is a really, really important plan and practice that everybody should engage in. So when you're looking at a source of information that you've never read before, so look around. What's the URL? Go to the about page. Who's writing it? Who's the author? Click on the name. What other sources have they written? Now, if it's a source you've never heard of, lateral research means you leave that page and you open a new tab and you search that source of information. Believe it or not, Wikipedia is a fantastic source of information about information. They can be trusted because it's crowdsourcing of information, but Wikipedia has standards of reporting. Like, they have to have a source of information that they're referring to. There are standards that don't allow you to have inflammatory tone or original reporting. You have to be citing your sources in there. So you can check the claims, you can check the evidence, open up a new tab, and research whatever it is you're finding. Finally, identify sources of information that you trust, right? There's nothing wrong with sticking to one or two sources of information and saying, this is the source that I go to because I find it to be trustworthy and transparent. So if you have any questions, drop in the chat, in the comments, wherever it is, reach out, and we will carry on tomorrow.